Willie Nelson, the iconic country music legend known for his long hair, bandana, and deeply emotive voice, represents not just freedom but also steadfast personal principles. Throughout his remarkable career spanning over 50 years, he has navigated numerous conflicts, facing off against traditional country stars like Hank Williams Jr., international celebrities including Julio Iglesias and Neil Young, and even taking on the formidable U.S. Internal Revenue Service. There was a time when the IRS seized nearly everything he owned: his home, recording studio, even the legendary guitar that had composed so much musical history. Yet Willie Nelson never retaliated with angry words. Instead, he responded with silence, strategic retreat, or in one memorable instance, by recording an entire album specifically to settle his debts. To this musical philosopher, music was never meant to be a battleground but rather a bridge connecting human souls. So who truly earned Willie Nelson's lasting disapproval? The revealing stories behind these 10 names will undoubtedly surprise you. There was a time when Hank Williams Jr. stood as the face of American pride and traditional country. As the son of the legendary Hank Williams, he carried the weight of the legacy on his shoulders. To him, country music wasn't just a genre. It was a sacred tradition. It was something you protected, not something you changed. That belief, strong and unshakable, slowly pulled him into conflict with Willie Nelson. Willie never tried to protect old rules. He stood for freedom, rebellion, and a new kind of honesty in music. He let his hair grow long, wore a bandana, supported the use of marijuana, and performed songs that challenged war and authority. His music didn't fit the clean-cut image that Nashville expected. To Hank Jr., this wasn't just different. It was dangerous. In interviews, Hank made it clear that he didn't approve of Willie's look, message, or attitude. He once described him as a hippie wearing a cowboy hat. To him, Willie was turning country music into something weak, even. Hank believed real country had rules, and Willie was breaking them. Although he never said it directly to Willie, the message spread fast within the industry, and Willie heard every word. But he never argued. He didn't go on stage to respond. He didn't defend himself in magazines. Instead, he stayed quiet and changed his path. He turned down events that involved Hank. He pulled out of shared concerts without a public reason. When asked, he simply said, "Some folks like to look backward. I'd rather keep moving." That calm reply carried more weight than any fight ever could. For Willie, music was not a battlefield. Once he sensed it was being used to judge and divide, he stepped back. Not because he was afraid, but because he believed music should bring people together, not tear them apart. He didn't raise his voice. He walked away. And by doing so, he showed that silence, when chosen for the right reason, can say everything. Glen Campbell was once the golden boy of country music. With his polished image, smooth vocals, and popular TV show, he was everything Nashville wanted the world to see. His songs climbed charts. His charm filled living rooms across America. To many, he was the future of the country. But not to Willie Nelson. Their paths couldn't have been more different. Willie played in dusty bars, wrote songs that broke the rules, and refused to fit the image the industry expected. Glen, on the other hand, wore suits, smiled for cameras, and kept his lyrics clean. They stood on opposite ends of a growing divide. One was a tradition made for television. The other was truth made for the road. Willie never spoke badly about Glen, but people close to him noticed the tension. Whenever Glen's name came up in interviews or backstage conversations, Willie's face would change. He never rolled his eyes or raised his voice. He just paused. That quiet pause said enough. There were rumors that Glen once asked producers not to book Willie on the same shows. No one confirmed it, but something shifted between them. They were rarely seen in the same room again. Fans expected a duet, or at least a handshake, at award shows. It never came. It wasn't about anger, it was about distance. Glen represented a version of the country that Willie no longer believed in. Willie didn't hate him. He simply stopped pretending they were part of the same mission. To him, music had to be honest, even if that meant standing apart from the crowd. Over the years, Glenn's spotlight faded. Willie's grew in other directions. They never clashed in public, but their silence lasted a lifetime. Sometimes not saying anything at all can draw the deepest line. Their voices shouldn't have matched, but they did. Willie Nelson, with his raspy edge and outlaw soul. Julio Iglesias, smooth like silk and perfectly foreign. Together, they recorded "To All the Girls I've Loved Before," a song that shouldn't have worked, but somehow became magic. It climbed charts across continents. It brought country fans and international romantics into the same room. The contrast made it beautiful. Two men from two worlds, singing with surprising warmth and ease. But behind the microphones, something else lingered. Something fragile. The cameras never saw what came after. But those close to Willie remember a night in Los Angeles that changed everything. It was a private charity gala. Small, elegant, crawling with industry faces. Willie arrived early, dressed casually, calm as always. He stood by the bar, ready for the usual handshake, maybe even a laugh. The press had gathered, hoping for a reunion. One picture, one hug, one shared memory of a global hit. Julio Iglesias walked in. Dressed to impress, surrounded by handlers. He looked across the room, spotted Willie, and kept walking. No pause. No nod. No gesture beyond a passing glance. He sat down with studio heads and executives, laughing at jokes Willie couldn't hear. Not once did he walk over. Willie didn't get angry. He didn't ask why. He just stayed quiet. A few sips later, he left. And just like that, the curtain fell. No applause, no encore, no goodbye. They never collaborated again. No second duet, no televised reunion, no private jam sessions are whispered about in interviews. Willie never spoke publicly about that night, but he didn't need to. For a man like him, loyalty wasn't a performance. It was a principle. And when someone turned their back, even without words, he heard it loud and clear. The song lived on. But the friendship? That ended in silence. Because sometimes the real heartbreak isn't in what's said. It's in who chooses to say nothing at all. Willie Nelson and Neil Young had walked parallel roads. Both stood against war. Both fought for farmers, freedom, and truth. Their voices were different, but their causes often aligned. For a while, they were seen as kindred spirits, outlaws with purpose. But even among rebels, lines can be crossed. It started with a song. Neil Young released a track that praised the American spirit, but carried lyrics that many felt dismissed country roots. Willie, who had always defended small-town values while still pushing for progress, felt caught in the middle. The words weren't aimed at him directly, but they cut close. Then came the Farm Aid concert. Willie had co-founded it with Neil to support struggling farmers. They had shared that stage for years. But one year, during a backstage meeting, Neil pushed for a new direction. He wanted to bring in younger artists and change the tone of the show. Willie disagreed. He didn't raise his voice, but he didn't hide his concern either. The concert wasn't just a show to him. It was a promise. After that night, their interactions cooled. They still appeared on the same stage, but the chemistry was gone. They played their sets, nodded in respect, then walked off in separate directions. Willie never accused Neil of betrayal. He never spoke his name with anger. But something sacred had shifted. What had started as a bond through music and mission now felt like two visions drifting apart. Sometimes, the deepest breaks come not from what's said, but from what's no longer shared. Waylon Jennings wasn't just another artist to Willie Nelson. He was more than a friend. He was family. Together, they built the outlaw country movement, turning their backs on the rules of Nashville and rewriting what it meant to be real. They shared hotel rooms, studio sessions, and stages across the country. When they laughed, it was loud. When they sang together, it felt like the truth. But behind the scenes, something else was growing. Willie was calm. Waylon was fired. Willie smoked to slow down. Waylon used to shoot up to keep going. Their lifestyles, once thrilling and wild, started to pull them in different directions. One wanted peace, the other chased storms. It wasn't a single fight that broke them. It was a pattern. Missed calls, late arrivals, broken promises. Willie would show up to the studio with a full notebook and a clear mind. Waylon would arrive hours later, tired, unfocused, or not at all. At first, Willie forgave it. Then he stopped asking. They never fought in public. No shouting matches, no angry letters. But the music told the truth. Albums that once featured both names began to carry just one. Interviews grew quiet on the topic. When asked about Waylon, Willie would smile gently and say, "He's doing his thing." But the silence was loud. Waylon had once said that Willie was like a brother, someone who never judged. But even brothers can drift, especially when one wants to climb higher and the other keeps falling. Years later, when Waylon's health began to fail, Willie reached out again. They spoke briefly. No blame, no bitterness, just two voices remembering what it once was. Willie never removed Waylon from his story, but he did learn to keep writing without him. Some people walk out of your life, others fade. With Waylon, it was both. And even in the absence, the bond remained, but the song had already ended. Ray Price wasn't just a mentor. He was the man who opened the door when every other one stayed shut. In the early days, when Willie Nelson was still just a songwriter struggling to be heard, it was Ray who said yes. He invited Willie into his band, shared his stage, and gave him a place on the road. For Willie, Ray was more than a teacher. He was a lifeline. Together, they lived the rhythm of country music, small towns, smoky bars, long drives, and short paychecks. Ray taught him how to survive, not just how to sing. And for years, Willie carried that loyalty like a badge. But music changes. People do too. As Willie's fame grew, so did his distance from the Nashville mold. He wrote songs that broke tradition, explored pain without filters, and embraced a raw, emotional honesty. The industry called it outlaw country. Ray called it something else. At first, he kept his thoughts private. But as Willie grew bolder in criticizing the business, the record labels, the fake smiles, the way old legends were being packaged and sold, Ray began to take offense. He felt those words weren't general. They were aimed straight at him. Then came the letter. Instead of a quiet call or a personal visit, Ray chose to write. His letter, printed in a national paper, was sharp. He accused Willie of disrespect, of abandoning tradition, of biting the hand that once fed him. Willie read the letter. He said nothing. No interview, no rebuttal, no second act. He simply stepped back. Years passed. They never shared a stage again. The man who once gave Willie his start became a name he no longer spoke. Not out of hate, but out of heartbreak. For Willie Nelson, loyalty is sacred, and when someone turns it into a headline, the wound doesn't bleed. It closes. Willie Nelson and Merle Haggard were more than just collaborators. They were two sides of the same coin. When they released Poncho and Lefty, it wasn't just a hit, it was a moment. The song captured their voices, their scars, and their understanding of what it meant to lose and to keep going. Fans thought they were inseparable. But the truth was quieter. Behind the scenes, Merle was unpredictable. He battled his demons, struggled with control, and never liked being told what to do. Willie, though patient, had limits. During the recording of their second album together, tension rose. Merle showed up late, re-recorded parts without telling anyone, and dismissed creative ideas that didn't come from him. Willie didn't push back. He let Merle be Merle. But after that project, something changed. The phone calls slowed down. The offers to tour together disappeared. When fans asked about another duet, both men smiled, but neither followed through. There was no headline, no fallout, no bitter interview, just distance. Merle later admitted that he felt Willie had moved on. He said it softly, not with anger, but with regret. Willie never denied it. their music remained. The bond did not. Sometimes even legends with matching voices end up singing in different directions. Willie Nelson had always been open to collaboration. From legends of the past to rising stars, he believed music could bridge generations. But some bridges are built on shaky ground. And when it came to Ed Sheeran, that ground cracked fast. It began with a phone call. A young producer pitched the idea of a duet that would blend Ed's pop melodies with Willie's timeless voice. The plan was bold. Ed had just topped global charts. Willie had recently completed a string of acoustic tours that stripped music to its rawest core. The idea was to merge both worlds in one track. At first, Willie listened. Then he hesitated. Ed flew to Austin. He showed up at Willie's ranch with his guitar, eager, respectful, and ready. They sat together under the Texas sun, traded chords, shared stories, and even played a few rough demos. From the outside, it looked promising. But Willie sensed something missing. The lyrics Ed brought were polished, radio-ready, and safe. The song spoke of love, but in ways that felt rehearsed. Willie asked to rewrite a verse. Ed declined. He wanted the message to remain unchanged. Willie didn't argue. He just stood up, nodded, and said, "Maybe another time." They never finished the song. Ed returned to London. The collaboration faded from headlines. Willie never brought it up again. Ed did, once, in an interview. He said working with Willie was an honor, but that the timing wasn't right. What he didn't say was that the vision was never shared. For Willie, music had to come from pain, from joy, from memory. It couldn't be built for charts. He respected Ed's success. But respect doesn't always mean connection. Sometimes when two artists speak different languages, even the same melody can feel like silence. It started quietly. Willie Nelson had always kept his ears open. He didn't mock new genres. He didn't dismiss young artists chasing sounds far from his own. Even when the world changed too fast, Willie chose to listen. He believed music had space for everyone. Then came Kanye West. Bold. Loud. Impossible to ignore. A storm in sneakers and sunglasses. Kanye's rise wasn't just about music. It was declarations, provocations, headlines. One minute he was praising God, the next he was rewriting history, and the industry followed every word like scripture. At first, Willie said nothing. No praise, no critique, just silence. But behind closed doors, he watched. Their names weren't meant to share air. Willie, the outlaw poet who found truth in 3 chords and the silence between them. Kanye, the sonic architect who layered distortion and gospel until reality felt like fiction. And yet, in the chaos of modern music, someone thought a bridge could be built. Managers started talking. Producers whispered. A collaboration, they said, would break the internet. Not for harmony, but for spectacle. Willie didn't entertain it. He didn't laugh. He didn't rage. He simply called it a circus and walked away. He never spoke those words on stage. But someone told someone, and eventually, the message reached Kanye. Kanye didn't stay silent. At a festival in California, under blinding lights and a sea of phones, he paused mid-set and threw fire. "Some old legends," he said, "think they're too holy to evolve." He never said Willie's name. He didn't have to. From that moment, the distance was carved in stone. Willie avoided every question. No comment on Kanye, no nod to hip-hop, no talk of generational bridges. For him, the clash wasn't about ego, it was about purpose. Willie made music to heal. Willie valued silence between verses. Kanye filled every second with sound. And in those choices, they revealed everything. Some artists build homes in the chaos. Others walk away from the fire even when the world demands a show. In another lifetime, maybe they would have found common ground. But in this one, they stood on different sides of the storm. Out of all the people Willie Nelson had crossed paths with, there was only one name he ever used the word hate for, the IRS. In 1990, Willie's world collapsed. Without warning, federal agents raided his properties. They seized his bank accounts, his ranch, even his recording studio. The reason? A tax bill that had spiraled beyond control. $16.7 million. Willie claimed he had no idea it had reached that number. His accountants had mismanaged everything. But the government wasn't interested in stories. They wanted money. Willie could have run. He didn't. Instead, he picked up his guitar. He recorded an album called The IRS Tapes, Who Will Buy My Memories, and gave the profits straight to the government. Fans showed up by the thousands to support him. They didn't see a criminal. They saw a man being crushed by the very system he had never trusted. For Willie, it wasn't just about taxes. It was about dignity. The IRS didn't flinch. They sold off his belongings in public auctions. They forced his friends to buy back his possessions just to give them back later. And through it all, Willie smiled on stage, joked in interviews, and played like nothing had changed. But something had. After that, he never spoke kindly about the institution. He once said in an interview, "You can mess with my music, but don't mess with my freedom." It wasn't about the money anymore. It was about being stripped of control. In a career filled with broken partnerships and fading friendships, the IRS was different. It wasn't a misunderstanding. It wasn't a creative conflict. It was a war. And to this day, if there's one name that Willie Nelson carries a grudge against, it's not a singer. It's not a former friend. It's 3 letters carved deep into every song he sang after. IRS. Willie Nelson's life and career stand as a powerful testament to the strength of quiet conviction. Across decades of music, clashes, and cultural shifts, he remained steadfast in his beliefs, never allowing conflict to diminish his integrity. His disagreements with figures like Hank Williams Jr., Glenn Campbell, Julio Iglesias, Neil Young, Waylon Jennings, Ray Price, Merle Haggard, Ed Sheeran, Kanye West, and even the IRS were never about ego or public feuds. Instead, they revealed a man who measured his words carefully, valued loyalty above all, and understood that some battles were best fought in silence. When traditionalists like Hank Williams Jr. dismissed him as an outsider, Willie didn't argue. He kept moving forward. When polished stars like Glenn Campbell embodied the establishment he resisted, he didn't lash out. He just stayed true to his path. When Julio Iglesias ignored him at a charity event, Willie didn't demand an explanation. He walked away, knowing respect couldn't be forced. When Neil Young's vision diverged from their shared mission, Willie didn't accuse him of betrayal. He accepted that roads sometimes split. When Waylon Jennings, his closest friend, spiraled into self-destruction, Willie didn't chastise him. When Ray Price, the mentor who once saved him, publicly condemned him, Willie didn't retaliate. He stepped back, his heart broken but his dignity intact. When Merle Haggard's stubbornness strained their partnership, Willie didn't force reconciliation. He let time decide. When Ed Sheeran's pop sensibilities clashed with his raw authenticity, Willie didn't fake enthusiasm. He politely declined. When Kanye West's spectacle-driven artistry clashed with his own, Willie didn't engage. He called it what it was and moved on. And when the IRS took everything from him, he didn't surrender. He fought back with the only weapon that ever mattered: his music. Through it all, Willie Nelson proved that real strength isn't about loud confrontations or public victories. It's about knowing who you are and refusing to bend, even when the world pushes against you. His legacy isn't just in the songs he wrote, but in the way he lived: unshaken, uncompromising, and always on his terms. In a world that often rewards noise, Willie Nelson's quiet defiance remains his most enduring message.